welcome to the Hire Talents Podcast, optimizing the hiring process for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. And I'm really excited today because I've got Cameron Herold, a true entrepreneurial genius with us. I was like shocked when he showed up on our schedule that he'd even be willing to spend so much time with us. But no, it's really a blessing. So if you guys don't know who Cameron is, well, first off, he's a serial entrepreneur ever since he was a kid, probably like many of us, been small businesses galore. He met the 1-800-GOT-JUNK guy in an EO forum. So those of you who are in EO or YPO or Vistage, I mean, you know this experience. And he was recruited to become the COO and took the business from like 2 or 3 million to 1.6 or 106 million. Man, I mean, like blew it up, right?
Yeah, that was me. It was fun.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we all know that name brand, and so it's really amazing. Subsequently, you know, he's a big name on the speaking circuit. See him all over the place, and so many of us as entrepreneurs probably seen him as a headliner or in other breakout sessions. And more importantly, and I think is really cool what he's done here, is he started the COO Alliance, which is kind of an EO, YPO, Vistage type of forum group for COOs who, you know, a lot of times are the ones making it happen. I mean, you know, no offense to all the entrepreneurs out there with these great visions, but, you know, the COOs are the ones doing the heavy lifting and having to do the execution part, right?
Yeah, it's funny, Fletcher. I've never understood why we're teaching guys like you and I, or Brian even, on how to run the company. What we should be doing is teaching the CEO what needs to happen, but teaching the COO, and then also investing in our leaders and teaching them how to make it happen.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, the COO Alliance, there's no entrepreneurs allowed to join. It's only for the second in command. Yeah.
No, I think it's really great. So for all the CEOs or COOs listening to this, I definitely would check it out. I'm a huge fan. So yeah, you know, so Cameron and I got a chance to kind of, you know, noodle around last week before this, and you know, I don't know, I was griping about how, you know, nobody teaches entrepreneurs or business leaders, let alone just entrepreneurs, but like the COOs or even worse, the middle managers or mid-level leaders, to be really, because that's what they are. Not managers, they're leaders, to be great at hiring, and probably even worse, nobody teaches them how to interview or select or to assess talent. There's minimal opportunities in business school and even within organizations to learn these things. And so I wanted to frame that problem up a little bit. I think, Cameron, you'd appreciate this. I think of it as a multi-million-dollar problem.
Oh, billion-dollar problem.
Yeah. You know, for any one organization, I mean, it might be tens to hundreds of millions of dollars just for that one company, right?
Yeah. There was actually a data point that I saw recently that says the cost of the wrong hire is 1 times the salary, but the cost of having that person in the role can be 15 times their salary.
Yep.
So it costs you 1 times the salary just to do it again, to restart the recruiting process, rehiring. But if you have the wrong person in the role, it's actually costing you 15 times their salary because of the problems, the opportunity cost, the negativity, the mistakes. Yeah, it's a really, really expensive problem.
And, you know, I spent a lot of time thinking about this. I mean, I've spent literally my entire life, I mean, since I was a teenager, thinking about hiring and building great teams and getting the right people on the bus. And, you know, I don't know, many years ago when I started this business or took over this business for my father, you know, about 8 years ago, you know, I was going through that, and I understood this concept, you know, of like, you know, it costs a lot, but you know, you start like breaking it down, like you start to think about it logically. You're like, well, you know, it costs me to get my computer, and I spend all this money on ads and interviewing and training, and I'm like adding it all up, and it's like, okay, I've got like $5,000 or $10,000 invested into this thing. And it's like, okay, well, it's not that much. It's the opportunity cost.
It's the opportunity cost, and then it's also if you actually took your effective hourly rate that you were actually spending on doing interviews, scanning through the resumes, setting up the interviews. following up on interviews, thinking about the candidates, the effective hourly rate that we actually waste multiplied by those hours. We often don't think about that. We think about the hard cost, but we don't think about our time. And there's a huge cost in there as well.
Yeah, and it's not if you're not getting the job done. I think about salespeople. I mean, this is the easiest equation, but you can use this equation for any role, right? Salesperson has, worked with a handful of in-home sales type folks, and that's, I mean, 1-800 got junk, right? In-home sales or B2C type of environment. And I mean, what's a sales quota for a good salesperson at 1-800 got junk? What are they producing in revenue annually for you guys?
Well, our franchise partners at 1-800 got junk do $1 million plus. The guys out in the truck are earning $40,000 a year.
Yeah.
So you get the wrong guy out in the truck and they're not landing all the additional jobs. They're not stopping to hustle and knock on doors. They're not upselling the customer. They're not wowing the customer on site. So there's all the spin-off problems. It can cost the franchisee, $500,000 because the guy in the truck isn't doing the job or isn't wowing the customers. And then if you flip it, if you have the right people, they're wowing the customers. They're amazing when they talk to the media because we get a lot of media coverage. They attract other employees to come and work there. They're driving to the dump, but they spot junk on the side of, at some business, they stop and they do a quick cold call. And you multiply one job a day times 250.
There's $5,000 generated or lost, right?
It's huge, right? It's huge over the course of the year.
Yeah. And so, I guess, I wanted to really continue to unpack this issue. I guess, I mean, it's a loaded question. But is hiring the most important thing that we do as leaders in businesses, or is it something else?
I think there's two. I think the most important job for a leader is to grow people. So once you have the right people, our job is to grow their skills and their confidence, But yes, if you can get ahead of the curve and hire the solid A's and B players, it's easier to grow even the best athletes have a coach, right? So even if you hire a bunch of A's, you're still going to grow their skills and confidence. But I think the two are intertwined. The thing that's always blown me away, and you and I were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, is I can't imagine being a company today who has a manager that has to do job interviews that hasn't had at least 20 or 30 hours of training on how to do job interviews. You consider the cost of that wrong person. Why would you ever allow a manager or leader to, if they don't know how to screen a resume, if they don't know how to set up the actual interview itself, if they don't know how to open the interview, if they don't know how to do the probing, if they don't know how to do the follow-up questions, if they don't know how to sell without your selling, if they don't know how to use the pregnant pauses and open questions and close questions and torque, they have no business doing an interview, let alone if they're not sure what behavioral traits to look for and what skills to look for and how to analyze the personality profiles being used. How can you possibly say you have a solid team?
And you just listed 15 different skills and strategies and techniques that you ultimately have to master to become good at interviewing, right? So that's not we're not going to teach you on this podcast and all of a sudden you're going to be great at it, right?
Well, that was even why I said at least 20 hours of training. Was you probably need about an hour of training at minimum just to become competent. Let's say that you had a bronze, silver, or gold.
Become aware.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. Is anybody even aware that you should have a system for analyzing or for reviewing a resume before you set up an interview? Probably not. Then do they know how to review a resume? Is everyone in your company reviewing it the same way? Do you know how to look at the gaps in the resume? Do you know how to call bullshit? And do you know how to look for precision? They don't even know what to look for.
How do you match the resume to the ideal candidate profile? Who is your ideal candidate, right? I think a lot of people can barely answer that question.
Yeah, right? I'm lucky because at a very, very early age, I was a part of an organization called College Pro Painters, which a lot of people know of, but College Pro went on to become the largest residential house painting company on the planet.
Yep.
And every year there were 60 of us at the head office that had to go out and recruit, hire, and train 800 franchisees. And then in 1 month, we had to train those 800 franchisees how to go out and recruit, interview, hire, and train 8,000 painters. So imagine being a company that had to recruit, interview, hire, and train 8,800 people every year.
You better have a bulletproof system.
You become operationally world-class at interviewing, right?
Yeah.
And yeah.
So we put systems into our businesses for all different types of activities that we do, whether it's sales or operations or service, right? And so we're constantly, thinking about implementing those, but yeah, we neglect to implement or you just implement and then let alone execute an amazing hiring system. So what did you learn at college, pro painters back then? What were they teaching you that, taught you how to be better at recruiting and hiring?
So I'll give you a few that kind of ring, or that still, I guess, are part of my system to this day. The first one is, as Stephen Covey used to say, from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, is you begin with the end in mind. So the first part is, what are you looking for in a successful hire? What are the behavioral traits that they have to exhibit? What are the core values in your company that they already have to live? And what are the skills or the roles that they're going to have to do, and have they done it before? I don't want to hire someone that knows how to do something. I want to hire someone that has done it. A good example would be, I know how to break a world record, but I've never done it. Right? So would you rather hire someone who's broken a world record or someone who knows how to break a world record? Yeah. Well, I know how to manage teams. Have I ever managed teams? Right? So so that's the starting point. The next one is to define in layman's terms, in very simple English, a definition for each of the skills or traits that you're looking for. Yeah. So, and then if everyone has the same definition in your company, then start off with a list of questions to at least start with, to start the interview, to see if you can rate people. It kind of goes on from there, but it's really start with what you're looking for.
Yeah, and I find myself talking to clients day in and day out, and it always begins there. I take it kind of a step further, and I agree. So I consider that's your candidate profile, right? What qualities, experiences do they have, and do they align with what I need? But what I need starts with the job description, and job description, ideally, and we see this very often, actually has not been thought through, right? We haven't really truly figured out what are the key measurable activities or outcomes that I'm hoping this person will achieve, right?
The measurable ones, right?
Yeah, exactly. The measurable is the key, right?
Well, and here's something that I just stumbled on about a year or so ago with job postings that now has blown me away. For the most part, there's not a single hiring manager or a VP of a business area, the people that are typically writing the job postings, or even the people in HR, most of those people have zero training at copywriting. Yeah. Most of them aren't good writers. Yeah. So think of your job posting as a sales letter or as a marketing piece.
It's advertisement, literally.
So you got to get your job posting rewritten by a copywriter to make it pop off the page to attract the right people. And I was like, I never even thought of that before.
Well, so here's how it all comes together for me, right? So you nailed it. Let's have the ideal candidate profile. Let's have a scorecard, and let's define those. So it starts with the job description, and I'm okay with the job description being boring as long as it is smart, right? Specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time bound. In the key things that I want them to achieve, right? If I'm going to hire a salesperson, there's a certain revenue. I don't care so much about the paperwork. Sure, it's on there, but you need to be good at paperwork, but I'll deal with it. But so I've got a smart that specifically you need to generate $1 million in revenue. Okay, great. Now you create your profile. Well, who's likely to be able to do that following your recipe? What kind of behavioral qualities and past experiences that they have that will match or prove that they can do it? Now, then you create your scorecard. So now that's a way to assess them. We haven't even begun advertising for a job yet, right? We've done all these things first because we've clearly thought through it. Now you create a job advertisement. So there's really these 4 key pieces that are the foundation of your hiring system that you really have to think through. And that advertisement being the last piece, differentiating the difference between a job description and a job advertisement are huge. And so I challenge anybody who's listening to this, go on Indeed and just look up whatever job you're hiring for and look at all your competitors' ads. And my guess is 7 to 9 out of 10 of them will look like a boring old job description.
Which is what you're going to end up recruiting as well. You're going to end up getting boring old job candidates.
Yep, exactly. And a handful of them will be these remarkable copywritten pieces that are inspiring and really generate interest with, you think A players like boring?
No. And the other thing for me about job postings is I actually want to push some people away. I
Yeah.
want to make it very polarizing so that everyone who reads it thinks this is absolutely for me, or there's no way I'd ever want to work there.
Yeah.
But I really don't want to leave anything up for interpretation. Like they have
Yeah.
to know this is going to be the hardest job they've ever had, but they're going to love doing it. They're going to work with an extremely bipolar, manic ADD CEO, but they're also going to know I'll go through brick walls for them. Like,
Yeah.
when you write stuff in that, and what's weird is most companies don't do this, and we're not even yet talking about reviewing the resume or doing the interview.
Yeah. I mean, we could sit here and talk for an hour just about getting this part right.
Yeah.
So, okay, so they taught you how to really properly identify the ideal candidate and really, got you the fundamentals of hiring ingrained in your systems then. So how did you master hiring? I mean, you must have been pretty good at it then, but I imagine this didn't just happen overnight for you.
No. So we had, back in the day, we had a couple of different trainers who came in to train us on doing interviews. So we were trained on, using the pregnant pause and open-ended questions and closed questions. And we called it the reverse sell and setting up the interview. And we were trained on all aspects of the job interview.
Yeah.
We videoed ourselves interviewing candidates using we had a VHS camera on a tripod. I remember when I was getting certified in interviewing, I was interviewing Kimball Musk, who was Elon's brother. And I had a video camera set up of me interviewing Kimball on interview. And I sent that VHS tape to my VP, and he went through the resume and the scorecard and my questions and watched the interview and gave me feedback on the entire process.
Yeah.
And then I went back and I practiced it again, right? What was I doing well? What wasn't I doing well? And that kind of constant coaching and feedback loop allowed me to get better. And then we would debrief. We would also debrief. If I ended up with a shitty candidate, I'm not going to say the guy's name, but 6 months later, I had this candidate who was like, how did this guy ever get hired?
Yeah.
And my VP pulled me aside and he goes, how did this guy ever get hired? Let's go back and look at your notes. Let's look at your prep, because we had to keep them all. And I went through, I'm like, oh, wow. I knew when I interviewed him that he wasn't good. Like, how did I right? So you work at that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that practice. I mean, my father always taught me, when you want to teach somebody how to do something, it's a see one, do one, teach one is a basic rule of thumb, right? You observe somebody doing it well. You do it yourself, right? You practice and you fail and you digest, right? And the teach one part's kind of interesting, right? Is regurgitating the information that you have, mastered or that you've learned, and having to then, maybe it's not, maybe don't, I mean, it's great if you can actually take what you've learned and then teach somebody how to do it. That's where mastery occurs, right?
Yeah, we called it Duragi. It was demonstrate. So you would demonstrate the task. Let's say I was going to demonstrate how to do closed questions. And then I would observe during a role practice. And then I would re-demonstrate. So you'd show them again so they could use reflective observation. And then I would give them a task. And then I would demonstrate, observe, re-demonstrate, assign a goal, give them a task, and then inspect. So then I would inspect how they did, and then we would cycle it back again.
Yeah, over and over again. Yeah. No, I love that. And I think we miss that so often. I mean, I think this is applicable to anything we do in our businesses, like when you're onboarding and teaching them the task, right? But I think in interviewing, that's the big part. And it's so funny.
Let's forget about managers and leaders for a second. How many entrepreneurs have ever been trained? Like the square root of none. Most entrepreneurs have had no training in this.
Yeah, we just wing it. It's all gut feeling, and we're just fumbling around trying to figure it out. Right?
I like them, right? I like that guy. I like that one. Wow.
Yeah. But why do you like them?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah. And too often the entrepreneurs are doing or the leaders are doing all the talking in the interview. And the candidate should be speaking 90 to 95% of the time.
Oh, you know what I love about mastering interviewing is it teaches you how to be a better manager, because the same thing applies when you're managing people. But okay, put that aside. It teaches you to be a better salesperson.
I've learned what we called the reverse sell, and we use this very well at College Pro Painters and at 1-800-GOT-JUNK. So the reverse sell was asking the candidate questions that get them to sell themselves on the job, and they get them selling you on why they'd be good for the job.
Yeah.
Instead of me telling them how good a company is, I'll say to them, so what was it about our vivid vision that has you excited?
Yeah.
What is it that from our company, from your research, that has you really wanting to work here? And I just get that, and it reinforces for them. But if I sell them on it, especially as a franchisee, they tend to run away because they feel like I'm trying to sell them a franchise. So it's the art of selling without selling.
Yeah. It's the same thing you do when you sell anything else, though, right? You're asking questions, you're uncovering what their personal and professional goals are, right? And once you better understand that, I can't sell you anything until I understand what problem I'm trying to help solve, right?
Yeah, we were trained in that as well. It was called the personal selling model. Once you understand the person's goals and their career goals, you pretend that that's the roof, and they're
Yeah.
trying to get up on the roof, and then your company is the ladder to get up on the roof. But if you don't know what the roof looks like, the ladder can go anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. If they want to work, you can go on and on with this. I mean, I think it's really amazing.
That's why we're talking.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is, one of the areas that, as I've been lucky enough to build two, growing companies, and I'm still in, relatively in my infant stages here. Well, one of the things is when we started these companies, I didn't want a job, right? I wasn't like creating a business in order to have a job. I mean, most entrepreneurs, that's what we don't. That's our goal, is not to have the job, but we find ourselves having it. But to allow them to stand on their own, so that I could do the things that I want, and what that's opened up for us is, one, we do professional search, and the other side of this is talent assessment. Is I found these opportunities to do consulting. And so we've increasingly been doing more and more of these, and everything we're talking about are the things that we talk about with folks. So I just, the exact like do one, see one, teach one, or, approach or that you were talking about here, I think it's just is amazing. And I think we need to spend more time on it. But let's say we're just, we're an entrepreneur, this is becoming increasingly a bigger part of our world, you don't have time to hire a coach, necessarily. What would you start doing today differently? What are three things that you would begin with to start improving your ability to hire?
So what's interesting is, in the school system, I think the school system messed us up, because the school system taught us that we were supposed to be good at every subject. And if we weren't good at every subject, we were supposed to get a coach or a tutor to help us get better at that subject. And we were supposed to work harder at that subject. The reality is most of us still suck at those subjects that we were bad at.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to get good at something you suck at, try to find some people in your organization who already have some excitement around it and have some competency, and let's get them better at it, is one.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think for the entrepreneur is to be aware of the parts of the interviewing and recruiting system that exist, and then to find some people that can help your managers and leaders get better at those. It doesn't necessarily have to be the blind leading the blind.
Yeah.
The entrepreneur doesn't have to get good at interviewing to then teach. So I would have all of your employees read the book Who by Jeff Smart. His dad, Brad Smart, wrote the book Top Grading, which is used by the best companies on the planet, but it's 800 pages.
Yeah.
Who is more digestible? I would have all of your managers and leaders read chapter 2 from my book Double Double, because it talks about the interviewing process that we used at 1-800-GOT-JUNK and College Pro. I would maybe find 2 or 3 videos on YouTube that are free on the interviewing side of the business, and have your people look at that. I have a course coming out called Invest in Your Leaders, and one of 12 modules is the interviewing module, where people can actually learn how to interview. But that would be the starting point. I think would be to, get a consultant to come in and teach you over Zoom or in person, read the book Who, that kind of stuff, to give you, that gives you some competency. That gives you like a base level of maybe bronze.
Well, that's the awareness part, right? So read the book. Yeah, top grading. I mean, we integrate that into the things we teach all the time. We love it. We're huge top grading people. We're huge fans of Lou Adler, who's been on this show. So we'll love him as well. And so, read the books, right? Get Cameron's, and so Cameron will make sure that your links are here on the web page so that people can find that and they can either read your book or they can get your e-learning course there. And I definitely encourage people to just consume as much of it as possible. I mean, that's how I learned, right? I read all these books and practiced all these things. And I read that stupid top grading book. I mean, that 2,000 pages, which is remarkable, but yeah, Who is so much better.
Yeah, and you know what? Here's what's interesting about adult learning is there's 4 stages of the adult learning cycle. The first one is what's called abstract conceptualization.
Yeah.
So that's when you're learning a concept. That's by listening to us talk or reading the book, you're getting the abstract. And then there's the active experimentation, which is practicing. So take this, so maybe have 3 or 4 of your managers read the book or read my chapter from Double Double, and then practice it and role play it with each other.
Yeah.
Do pretend interviews with each other. So now you're getting the active experimentation, and then actually do the concrete experience. So do some interviews, maybe record them using your iPhone or record on video. Tell the candidate you're doing it for training purposes. They're all okay with it because they want the job anyway.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
and then watch what you've done, and that's the reflective observation. And then go, after you've done 2 or 3 interviews, go back and read the book a second time. And then it's going to start I was like, oh shit, I didn't do
I
that.
missed
that
that
well.
part, or I could enhance it this way or that way.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't read the book once and think you're at a goal. Like Tiger Woods has been practicing the same shots for 30 years.
Yeah, I'm a Malcolm Gladwell guy. 10,000 hours of excellence.
Right. So read the book Read the book Who 3 times over the next 12 months. Read it once a quarter, and then practice it, and then watch the videos over, and that's where that reinforcement of that learning will start to stick in.
I read the book. I reread the book, First Break All the Rules. Are you familiar with that one? Like that, as an early manager, and I was like 26 or something, and I took over, started managing a pretty large operation, and I kept rereading it and the different chapters and the 12 things that you got to do to be an effective leader, right?
Yeah.
And I read it the first time, and then I'd go back and I'd read it again and again, and yeah. And so with interviewing, I recommend people do exactly what you said. And it's the practice part. And I guess one of the things that always gets me is that leaders often complain they don't have the time to do it.
I think you don't have the time not to. Like, I had someone the other day and they were saying, well, what if I train all my employees and they quit? And I said, well, what if you don't train them and they stay?
Yeah. Like it's absurd.
The leader doesn't have time to learn how to interview, but he has time to then manage C players forever.
Chaos.
Hold them accountable. Like, you have to,
yeah.
I'd rather do it right. I'd rather work hard and do it right than not work hard and do it 6 times.
Yeah. You could practice. I mean, we put together like this compilation of all these best practices. We call it the Power Interview Guide. And you can practice mastering interview in 30 minutes. Now, it's not the full deal. It's not the whole, top grading career history thing, which you need to do, but you can practice each of the steps effectively in a short 30-minute interview. And I always think about it this way. If I interview 10 people this week, that's 5 hours of my working life, right? I mean, that's palatable. I can manage that. And I just got 10 reps, right? I'm going to be that much stronger when I get my next 10 reps, right? It doesn't take that much time and energy to really practice this stuff.
Well, what really takes the time and energy is to manage and hold accountable and deal with the crap of all the ones that you mishire.
Or not achieve your goals. Right.
Or the cost of all that, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I always think about it that way. I mean, especially in the sales side, I mean, I got $1 million producer. If I misfire on that, I just literally lost $1 million. I have to reset. It's another 3 to 6 months before I get someone hired, to get them trained, get them back on track, if I'm lucky, for them to maybe not make their goals again, right?
Got it.
So, yeah. Well, hey, Cameron, this has been absolutely amazing. Dude, what you've done and the focus that you put on this. I mean, I talk to coaches all the time, and I just love that you are so hyper focused on this, and you've really practiced the ultimate techniques here, and are sharing that with folks. So really appreciate having you on. Where can we find you?
Yeah, all 5 of my books are available on Amazon, Audible, and iTunes.
Okay.
And then my COO Alliance website for any companies doing 5 million or greater in revenue, they should definitely take a look at that. And then my Second in Command podcast is a really good one where we only interview the COO of really great brands as well.
Nice. You can learn from other
Well, and then I also
executors.
mentioned, just because we're launching it, we're launching March 1st, but the Invest in Your Leaders course is a great way for all companies to get their managers and leaders up to speed and skilled up in 12 core areas that every manager needs to get skilled in, that most companies, if you're less than 500 employees, you don't have the HR and learning department to grow your people. And this course can really help people.
It gives you that foundational piece, and then from there you can tweak it and make it your own. I imagine. Yeah, I'd love if you can get us a link. I don't know if there's like a pre-registration for that, and we can put that in there and make sure that we're promoting it along with this. And I definitely encourage people to digest this information, dig into it, whatever piece is interesting to you, get after it. Cameron's definitely the ultimate executor here, and that's big piece of this. So that's awesome. So yeah, investinyourleaders.com here. So we'll share that in our social posts and on the page here. So thank you again, Cameron. We'll end it here.
Fletcher, you're welcome.